Thanks for joining me on Piccadilly Talks. I'm your host, Angellique Virtue. Today we're going to be having a conversation about the home and its implications on the school. How do families play a part in ensuring that pupils show up prepared and ready to learn? And to have that conversation with me is Mrs. Rochelle Parkinson-Henry. She is the principal at Keith Primary School in the Garden Parish of St. Anne. Principal Henry, good day to you.
Good day to you.
We're very happy to have you. We're
Thank you for
thrilled,
having me.
in fact, to be able to have this kind of conversation as we discuss education and the 21st century, because the home remains a constant in all of the conversations about how education changes, how it evolves, and how we respond. What we do in the home is something that has to be a part of that conversation.
Certainly.
And so I wanted to start by asking you, how do you see families showing up in the quality of the pupil or the quality of the readiness of the pupil in the classroom? How important is it? What are what does a prepared pupil look like as opposed to a pupil that is unprepared coming from the home?
Thank you again. A prepared pupil is one who has a disciplined approach to learning. What does that look like? Home assignments are completed. There is an attitudinal approach for excellence in group presentations, in participating in extracurricular activities, because that pupil is very mindful that not only is he or she being held accountable by the teacher, but also by home. And home, in some cases, might be a single parent family, but there is still accountability. Versus an unprepared pupil. Disruptive, and by disruptive we look at indiscipline, we look at forming gangs, we look at disregard for authority, we look at work not being completed, we look at a lack of focus. We are not going to delve into the cognitive development because there might be some cognitive challenges for such learners, but we're looking at those that are unprepared and not being held accountable in the home.
One of the, I believe, flawed ways of thinking about the importance of the home is that some people believe that a child from a socioeconomic background that is more privileged, the family has more resources financially, as opposed to a family or a home that does not have as much access to financial resources, that one pupil is automatically better prepared. And sometimes families that have less resources think that they're already at a loss. But I don't believe that way of thinking is necessarily true. In other words, do you have to have a lot of money to properly prepare your child to be a good pupil in school?
Absolutely not. It begins with that A word, the right attitude, and holding your child accountable from the womb.
What does that look like?
It
Holding
looks
your
like-
child accountable.
It looks like beginning from the clinic stage, and we're not talking about the policies yet, but from visiting the clinics, what the nurses can teach our young mothers, or not necessarily young mothers, but mothers who go to the clinic. What the OBGYN can also teach a mother who can afford to go privately, what they need to do from the child is in the womb, reading for them. Using videos that enhance literacy and numeracy by virtue of stories being read for them, phonics, so the phonetics develop. So it might seem pedantic or overrated, but it's not, because when that child is born and that continues, the consistency of it, we find that those children, doesn't matter if you have $1 million or $100 in your bank account, that child knows that education is at the center of my development, and my mother holds me accountable for that.
That's incredible. So somehow it starts with the parent in a way that's unavoidable, because you're saying even from the womb, there is a role to be played in creating that discipline and that attitude toward learning.
Certainly.
That's remarkable. Now, when we don't do that, what are some of the behaviors? And you touched on it already, and I want you to go a little bit deeper, because we want persons to understand how important home is and a sense of home for the child, that they're accountable to persons outside of school. When we don't create that kind of discipline, what do we see happening in the schools?
What we see happening is, an example I will use, a child who is afraid to come to school, and not afraid because of what will happen to school, what will happen to them at school or being bullied, but there's no appetite for learning, there's no hunger, there's no excitement for learning. The child prefers to be at home, and the mother facilitates that. He doesn't want to come, so we're not going to force him to come. What does that child look like? One, the child who might be a grade 2 student is reading at the pre-primer level, and by pre-primer we talk about kindergarten. Reading at the pre-primer level puts that child at a disadvantage if they're not able to access the strategies to enhance the reading. When that child is unprepared, starting with the reading level, we find that the child becomes frustrated. When the child is in class, the child is easily distracted. Distraction looks like every other child is picking on me, or there's an issue with every other child. Anything for me not to do the work, because from the initial stage, there is not that understanding or that grooming of helping the child to say, listen, education will help you with reading, education will help you to master certain skills, and even to use what parents often say, let me make you get what me never get. When that's not there, that's what an unprepared child looks like. Wow.
And, some persons have posited that the primary system is failing our nation, that the issues that we see in the high schools, especially as it relates to the low pass marks in math and English, are children are coming in from primary school not being able to read at the grade 7 level. And you, Principal Henry, are a primary school principal, and they have said, these persons, that the blame needs to be laid squarely at your feet and others like you who are sending out children who are not able to matriculate out of the system properly, because it starts early. But we're having a conversation about the home, and I want you to respond to persons who have that position and tell us what you think, or where you think. We're not trying to lay blame, but we're trying to find where the true cause of the issues we're facing may come from. How would you respond?
The early childhood level, which
is
it's
before primary.
So I'm referring to the early childhood level because your school of thought, how persons posit primary level, that's a school of thought we often hear from where we sit.
Right.
And so the focus has been at the early childhood level, 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, kindergarten, that once the literacy and numeracy is addressed and parents are taken through parent clubs, parenting in the home, extended literacy in the home. What does that look like? It looks like setting up areas, assisting parents to set up specific areas in the home with sight words, with reading areas as the cushions. And these parents are monitored along with the children. Then once that is done, because we find that we have to teach our parents too. We cannot take it for granted that some things are known. So we teach them. And so we have these areas set up in the home. Guidance counselors who might be in the schools, or the teacher will visit the home, monitor those areas. Then there is a continuity of those strategies in the classroom, so that that child sees the connection between home and school, grounded in education and literacy and numeracy. And then that carries on to grade 1 at the primary level.
Principal Henry of Keith Primary, you mean to say that the literacy problems we are seeing as a country, where it cannot be big, we cannot begin to address it in primary school.
No.
Parents have to begin from their children are in pre-K and basic school, so to speak.
Certainly.
That's where we have to start. So we can't say you reach a grade 1, you're supposed to read now. It has to be, we're singing ABC and we're counting, just having the child at 2 years old, along with saying his first set of words, he needs to be able or she needs to be able to count. They need to be able to identify their colors. And we're saying that's at home because they aren't in the formal system yet. So addressing literacy and addressing numeracy, not primary, not even kindergarten, but we're saying as that child begins to have conversations, education has to become part of it. And by education, we mean the numeracy and literacy tools. We need to start even there.
And if somehow the first stages are missed, once, and that's what I pointed to just now, once they're at the early childhood level and those areas are missed, not too late, these areas can be set up to facilitate that. Letter sounds, phonetics, phonology from that level. Children calling words, children, the vernacular, the language learned versus Jamaica, patois. And helping the child transition from, not transition, but understand the two languages, because they're languages. And so the child says something, you do the English. The child says something English, you, because it's still a language, and you're still learning the phonetics and all of that. So if it is missed before 4-year-old, 5-year-old, K2, K3, then schools are actually putting in measures where they work with parents. They set up literacy areas in the home, monitor the parents, train the parents first, have the conversations, and then monitor it and continue in the classroom.
That's remarkable, because I think what we're learning through season 4 of Piccadilly Talks is there's a way in which the system of education is changing to meet people where they are. We've had conversations where Heart is going into communities to certify persons. The University of Technology is engaging persons who do not meet the prerequisites by saying, okay, come and join us, and then we'll bring you up to standard to engage in our programs. And here you are as a primary school principal saying that at the early childhood level, at those initial stages, we are saying to parents, we'll come into your homes. And so home becomes this incredible starting point for what we're trying to accomplish through these conversations, which is to talk about how we educate in the 21st century and how some of our cultures have to change. I wasn't aware that we're taking those kind of parenting, what would you call it, interventions, where we're saying if you didn't know that ABC and 1, 2, 3 and sight words were important, we're going to tell you and we're going to help you. Kudos to you and your colleagues at the primary school level, because won't that cause a change? Have you been able to see changes? Have you been able to see this and to see how these children have moved from one stage to the other? Can you tell us about it?
Oh, yes. Years ago, or the basic school system, as they would call it, each child enters, you know how to spell your name. And, we found that, let's just start there. We found that there are children who are entering the early childhood institutions and they don't know their RGD names, as we call it.
So when you say, what is your name?
Pinky. Because Pinky is what they call me in the home. But she doesn't know that her name is Danisha, or Jody, Ann, or Mary, or Maria. And so we find that these centers that we are setting up and having the conversations with the parents, and the National Parenting Council, they're doing a lot of work in terms of going into the communities and meeting the parents where they are, but meeting them where they are and taking them to levels gradually, being patient with them, teaching them. And so those are the changes we are seeing, where parents now understand that this is something that we start in the home. This is something we're going to help you monitoring in the home. There are charts that parents come in between Monday and Friday, and they help to make the charts. They help with the teachers and the children. They're making the charts so that they are involved and understand now that we take this approach in the home. There's also an approach where we tell parents, allow the children at the primary level to write your grocery list, to write your market list, so that the literacy has been built there. If you're not sure of the spelling, you take that list to us. then we can now help you to target certain areas, all grounded in first diagnosing. And when a diagnosis of the child's reading level is ascertained, then we can now know how to carry out the interventions, inclusive of the parents being a part of the intervention.
The young people would say all my flabbers are gasted because it's such a granular approach that is needed. And the grocery list sounds so interesting and sounds simple, but isn't it such a useful tool, because both the parent and the child becomes involved in their literacy in a way that shows the utility of the English language to a young child.
Certainly.
Because they need to understand the why and what we're doing.
Correct.
We talk about these sociocultural matters, and I want to move to the socioeconomic, the home and the school, and how there are homes that are more economically stressed than others. And the parent has good intentions, is aware of what needs to be done, but has long hours of work and time constraints that prevent them from engaging with the child. And I wonder if you've experienced any parents like this. Their minds and hearts are willing, their time and their need to work is also there. What are some ideas or some tools that you have seen at work that has garnered good results in the home?
We are very mindful of the economic climate in which we operate, and we're very mindful that single-parent families, mothers, it's a lot for them to be provider and the long working hours. Now, I'm coming from a context, or I'm in a context rather, where most of my mother's parents work in the hotel industry. And so we know the long hours, we know the early mornings they have to be out and the late evenings they're in. Right. What then do we do? Communication is very important. And so we utilize WhatsApp messaging to highlight the tasks that need to be done. We also empower the children by use of peer ambassadors. So peer coaching is not only limited to teacher, as is usually theoretically presented. But we have taken it now to students, where students are now accountable for another student.
Oh my.
And they assist them as best. Consistency is the order of the day. They assist them as best as possible. What do we do for the home? We make the parent aware. We also begin with helping the parent understand you're not in this alone. And so for your day off, if you cannot come in, call. Through our guidance department, on your day off, with your permission, we come in and we do a home visit so that we can make you aware of where the child is. Not necessarily carrying the narrative of the child is not doing this or this is not happening, but this is where the child is, this is what we're doing. And let us partner together that when you are available, then we too will make ourselves available to provide assistance.
A thought that came to me as you went through some of the tools, which are excellent, is the multi-generational home. The idea that there is a community that might be present. Some children are able to experience that and others aren't. Do you see where there is value in being in a home where grandma and grandpa is present or available to the child? Does that affect or impact preparedness or learning outcomes, you find?
In some cases, it negatively affects the learning outcome.
We would like to understand.
Because of the technological age in which we are now living, and because of the deficiency with our grandparents, and the deficiency in terms of their ability to assist them, one, but two, their ability to monitor if work is being done. And so children are very crafty, they're very brilliant in that regard, and they know how to go around to the grandparent. Mm-hmm. And for physical reasons, and as a grandparent, you're at that stage, they're not able to monitor as they would. So what do? We tell mothers, fathers who come in late, we know you have come in late and you're tired, just check the bags. You don't necessarily have to have a conversation just yet, but check the bags. 1, 2, put structures in home so that when you come in, there's a reporting system, even if it is written on your little fridge door. This is a homework that should be done. So you're checking the bags for that. You're checking to ensure that the system of, mommy, when John comes in, this should be done. John also knows that this should be done. So if you're able to be very crafty with grandma, know that when I come in, I should see this. With auntie or uncle, know that I should see this as best as possible. That is
so
what
we're taking advantage of the caregiving in terms of there is somebody to watch your child.
Correct.
But we're putting systems in place to support the caregivers
Correct.
to ensure that the child, at this very curious, crafty stage, still does what is needed. If you had the opportunity, Principal Henry, to inform a state policy, a government policy to improve these relations. You've identified programs that are sound incredibly supportive. If there's an additional policy or a way that schools could assist more or that parents could be more involved, what would it be, or what would you suggest or recommend as a policy approach across our primary school system?
The National Parenting Council, they're doing a tremendous job in that regard. And so I would enhance such a policy to provide and look at how can we provide more parenting centers across regions, not necessarily parishes, because we know that might be an extent, but regionally. How can we provide more parenting centers, actively run parenting centers, where parents can come in and personnel in these centers can go out more in the communities, because we are mindful of the communities that exist across Jamaica. And so training can be done, teachings can be done, and just psychosocial sessions for our parents. Because our parents, they need someone to talk to. They need that therapy. They really need that as parents. And very often they don't have that channel with which to utilize. And so more parenting centers across the regions attached to the Ministry of Education, that is what I would look at.
I agree with you. I know of the work of our parenting council, and more resources, more targeted support in the regions, psychosocial support, that would be a whole other conversation to have concerning the support parents need in with the realities they face. But that's all the time we have for the conversation, and we're so happy that you came to join us, Principal Rochelle Parkinson-Henry.
Thank you for having me.
It has been our pleasure talking about the role of the home, the challenges parents face, but also incredibly the tools that are available to parents. That's the time we have for this episode of Piccadilly Talks. Thank you for joining me. I'm your host, Angelique.